Okay, we're going to start our annual business plan update. This is the first of 3 webinars. We've got a couple more this week. The second one is tomorrow at noon. And then the third one is this Thursday at 5 p.m. So thank you for all of you who are here today. We plan to end this webinar at 6 o'clock. It's a 1-hour webinar. So I'm going to introduce our speakers, and then I'm going to just go through a few housekeeping items. So first off, we have Rob Padgett. I'm Camille Tao. I work for Capital Corridor. I'm a manager of special projects, specifically Link 21. Rob Padgett is our managing director. Leo Sanchez is our deputy managing director. And Shirley Chan is our principal planner. So you're going to be hearing from all of them today. And also supporting us is Anne Marie Wong, who's also with Capital Corridor. She's going to be managing the chat and the Q&A. Okay. So, okay, just to start, all the participants' cameras are automatically off, as well as muted. So when you raise your hand, I will unmute you when it's time for you to ask your question. Please use the Q&A feature in Zoom, not the chat. Please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions and comments. We'll do our best to address them during the workshop, but if we can't get to them, we will be compiling answers to questions. And then finally, this workshop is being recorded and we will make it available online afterwards. So just a little bit about our annual business plan process. On the 13th, we made the draft available for public review on our website. From the 17th to 19th are the 3 public online workshops that I mentioned. We welcome your comments. The deadline to submit comments is January 23rd. And our final draft will include all the public comments and the responses to them. And then finally, the final draft business plan will be presented to the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority Board for adoption at the February 15th meeting. So you'll see that in the chat, Anne-Marie has put the link to the business plan on our website, and you'll be able to submit comments there. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rob.
Thanks, Camille. And it's great to have you all here today. As some of you may be aware, the business plan workshops are a great chance for us to hear from our customers, other stakeholders who are interested in what we're up to at Capital Corridor. Today, we're going to go through the items that are shown on the slide here. And as Camille said, feel free to chat, to type something in the Q&A, and we'll, if we see it as we're going through a slide, we'll respond to it, or we'll cover it at the end. And if you can go to the next slide, please, Camille. So this first slide just gives you a snapshot of where we were for fiscal year 22. And just so you know, our fiscal year for these performance metrics runs from October 1st to September 30th. So this is the period through September 30th of last year, 2022. We had ridership of 705,000, and that compares, just for those who are interested, to about 1.8 million in the last full year before the pandemic. It is actually, although the number seems low compared to pre-pandemic, it is about double what we were in FY21. So we are still coming back. Our revenue at 17.8 million is about half of what we were at pre-pandemic. Our on-time performance this past fiscal year was 83%. Our target is 90%. A lot of that was due to issues with right-of-way which included vehicles on tracks and unfortunately fatalities in some cases. That drove a lot of that on-time performance. It is not where we want to be. We want to be above 90%, and we have been for a number of years. The fare box recovery ratio, what that is the percentage of your budget, your operating costs that is covered through fares. We're at about 35%. The goal of Capital Corridor, according to the state, is about 50%. We did hit 60% just before the pandemic. And then last year, our on-time customer satisfaction was 86%. You can go to the next slide, please. And this is just to give you a real snapshot. If you look at our passengers, we sometimes get defined as just a commuter service, but actually about half of our, if you look at people commuting to and from work at 36% and 9% that are for business travel, just shy of half of our customers are on something related to work. But we also carry a lot of leisure travel, visiting family and friends, leisure, recreation, vacation. That's essentially a split 50-50. Historically, work's been a bigger share, but that has changed a little bit in recent years. Next slide. Back one. And just to give you a sense of our riders and what tickets they're going to use, we're going to talk about some really interesting stuff coming up that's in our business plan about tickets. You can see about 3/4 of our tickets these days are coming from people just purchasing a round trip or a single ride ticket. That's down. We used to carry a lot more monthly riders and 10 ride passengers. That's changed a little bit. And then on the right, you can see the mode split. This is how people get to the station. And one of the really important things for Capital Corridor is we want to make sure that when we think about ways to access our stations, that we serve all modes of travel, bikes, scooters, walking, driving, transit, because people really do get to our service through all those means of travel. Next slide, please. And this will give you a sense of where we are in ridership. You can see on the left side, our recent trends. We're just above 50% the last few months compared to pre-pandemic. And what we're trying to do in this business plan and looking forward is bracket those. So we're still in that recovery period. So we're all trying to figure out the long-term impacts of the pandemic on our travel patterns. And very much like all of you trying to figure it out in your day-to-day, we're doing the same. And you can just see the brackets of where we think we're going to be over the next couple of years as our ridership continues to come back. Next slide. This slide shows you where we've been on service. We pre-pandemic, we were at 30 trips a day, 30 trains a day, 15 round trips between Sacramento and Oakland, and 22 on weekends. And we went down to as little as 5 round trips a day or 10 trains per day, 7 days a week. And we've gradually increased our service over the last several years. We're now back to full service on weekends and 12 round trips on weekdays. Next slide. And this is just depicting that in the business plan, we have to have an assumption here about where our service is going to be within the next 2 years, which is what our business plan covers. The presumption we're making for the purposes of budgeting is that we go back to full service on October 1st. There's a really important caveat to that. We're required to do that and get support from the state to do that. And we'll talk a little bit about some of those constraints as we move forward. Next slide. The biggest issue that we see going forward is equipment availability. We are relying on some new equipment coming into California that will result in some of the bi-level equipment getting shifted back to Capital Corridor. We need that new equipment to be able to add any additional service. These are called venture cars, which are single level cars that will be used out in the San Joaquin Valley. And what will happen is some of the equipment they're using will then get shifted to the other two rail services in California, our service and also the service in Southern California. The second issue is budgets and resources. We absolutely, like all agencies, have to watch our budget. We do have some of the same fiscal constraints that other agencies are facing in California. We benefited from federal dollars during the pandemic, and that's allowed us to stretch our resources over a couple of years and not have major cuts in service, but we definitely will need to watch that as we consider any service changes. And then obviously staffing and workforce availability. Some of you know we had to reduce our service a little bit this summer because we were short on crews. But we're going to have to watch that as well as we consider additional additions of service. And with that, I think I'm handing it over to Leo for the next slide. Is that right, Leo?
That's right. Thanks, Rob. Okay, so just to build from what Rob was discussing on safety and security, it actually has been one of the very critical issues that has affected and had a negative impact on our on-time performance. So we have seen just an increase of vehicle and trespasser incidents that have occurred on our right-of-way. We have a number of different initiatives, some that we have started since about 5 years ago, and we're continuing, which include adding some fencing, securing the right-of-way, really just to ensure that the public is safe when they're around the track. So it's very clear that, you know, the railroad property is a potential risk for pedestrians. So we really want to keep both people walking and riding their vehicles along the safe path. And a few of the other things that we're doing here on our right-of-way are starting with this year, we will have a couple of special agents that will help in encouraging folks to not really get within the perimeter of the railway. So the right-of-way is generally at least 15 feet from center of the tracks, and we really need to make sure that we keep that area clear for trains, both passenger and freight trains that go down on the corridor. We're going to start working with some of our stakeholders this year and providing some assistance in really trying to get some funds that can be utilized to enhance some of the grade crossings where we see a lot of incidents. And we're going to continue our Operation Lifesaver outreach. And then I think we'll start to see a lot of the funding that has been available both at the state level and federal level to really start utilizing some of that to improve our right-of-way. And you can see a little bit of our work there on the background, that this is actually Hayward, and it's in a community that actually has a high school. Tennyson High School is in that area, and it's now completely fenced for 3/4 of a mile. So it's very clear that, you know, folks should not be crossing that area. It's a dangerous area to be on or near the tracks. So we want to continue to promote that type of positive behavior. Next slide. All right, so now moving on to some of the more exciting elements of our workforce that has been of our staff that's been working on. We have some rolling stock equipment improvements. First, I'm going to start with renewable diesel. Is a project that we've been working on for almost 2 years. We finally got this certification from Cummins and EPA certification last year. So we had a number of challenges working through that, but we finally have it, and we're working with the state, with our partners at Amtrak, to make a full transition in Northern California. And actually the 3 intercity passenger rail agencies will be making the switch. So look forward to having an announcement once we have completed our transition to renewable diesel. The rolling stock is exactly what Rob mentioned earlier. You know, we have the venture cars that will be commissioned on the San Joaquin route, and that will free up some equipment that both Losan down in Southern California and Capital Corridor will be able to use and really expand the number of equipment that we're running on our fleet. We have a truck overhaul project that will be kicking off soon. That one's really exciting because customers will be able to enjoy a much more smoother ride and really just improve the longevity of the fleet. And then lastly, and something that you'll continue to see more about is our planning as we transition to zero emission equipment. So we have been working directly with our state partners, with state regulators, as we work towards transitioning to zero emissions. As you may have seen, Southern California SBCTA actually got signed on for 4 fuel cell units, Stadler equipment that will be used down there, and the state has actually signed on for additional units. So you might start seeing some pilots down in San Joaquin might be first, but this is definitely something to watch, and we're committed to transitioning to zero emissions. So more to come on that topic. Next slide. All right, so service amenities. Some of this is perhaps a reminder for those of you that have been riding with us, and for those that are starting to come back with us, you might see some of these exciting parts of our service. First off, CalPIDS modernization is continuing. A lot of this is on the back end software, which is essentially just transitioning the way that CalPIDS is displayed from Amtrak onto CCJPA, but we also are going to be working on upgrading some of the hardware elements of this. The other part, and perhaps more exciting than that, is our Wi-Fi. It continues to serve the public for both of those that are using it for leisure and also for our business commuters. So we do have a great Wi-Fi on our service. And one of the recent additions that started I think about a couple months ago now, was the launch of 10 free full-length movies. So if you're taking a long trip down, perhaps to watch the 49ers, you could actually watch a movie while you're doing that. So it's a great way to kick back and just relax. Food service is continuing on our trains, and Cappy Hour is back. So I know we heard from several riders that wanted to see Cappy Hour back, and we do have that kicked off the end of last year. And then lastly, we are continuing our efforts to work with Amtrak on our ADA accessibility improvements. You may have seen some of the work already taking place in certain areas, like Oakland Coliseum and Martinez, and we have some more extensive work planned for areas like Davis, and we have additional planned work that is just going to continue to improve the overall safety and accessibility for all passengers. And next slide.
Hey, Leo, there was a question about what are policy changes, rules, changes in law that allows the removal of trespassing persons, homeless encampments, and avoiding public access to the right-of-way? Maybe just comment on that before we get too far from that slide.
Sorry, my audio and video disconnected momentarily.
Do you want us to repeat it?
Yeah, there's
no, it was about the question.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat about the trespassing persons and encampments.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so there haven't really been any specific policy changes on it. This is actually I guess I'll rephrase that. There have been some recent rulings on certain encampments that have been multi-jurisdictional. However, in the right-of-way where it's only Union Pacific owned right-of-way, the practice has continued to be that the Class 1 railroad, or in our case, Union Pacific, has the right to maintain that area safe and clear. So that is generally the practice. However, there are areas in our right-of-way where we do have multiple partners and stakeholders that own the right-of-way. It might be a highway overpass that might be going over the railroad, and in those instances there are multiple stakeholders that are involved. And then the next question,
and I can probably get this one, Leo. The other question that's up is Union Pacific has been criticized by the Surface Transportation Board as the worst performing Class 1 railroad. Amtrak has filed a formal complaint. Have UP's performance issues affected Capital Corridor? And we are aware of the issues that have been raised regarding Union Pacific. It has been raised really more about the long distance service. We're fortunate that in our particular area, for one thing, there's not as much freight traffic. We sometimes have some freight conflicts between Auburn and Sacramento, but we benefit from a many years ago agreement between Union Pacific and Capital Corridor that provides performance incentives for Union Pacific to achieve on-time performance. And then those incentive payments are rolled back into the railroad through some of the investments made in our corridor. So in general, what I would say is that our relationship with Union Pacific is positive. and that most of the issues that we have with OTP are outside of the control of Union Pacific. We also just work with them, and we'll talk more about this in the coming slides about some of the investments we're making. So I'll let Shirley cover some of that, and then maybe we'll get some of these other questions after Shirley runs through some slides.
Sounds good. I'll finish up this one and then I'm going to hand it over to Shirley after this slide. So on service reliability, we have actually three near-term projects that we've been working on. One is actually completed, and that's actually the Siege signal replacement. So that's just north of Berkeley, where we've had some recent improvements, and that really helps with the reliability on that part of the corridor. Then we also have the Agnew siting that we're working on. We're going to try to secure some funding for that. And that actually will allow us to be able to have better meets with either other passenger trains or potentially even trains from Union Pacific in that corridor. The south end of our corridor is single track for the most part, and it really limits our ability to have a better service and reliability there. And this will be a great improvement to just having that redundancy and being able to make better meets. And then the last one is the Davis interlocking and signal replacement. This actually sets the foundation for a bigger project, but it starts with improving the signal replacement in this area, which is well over 70 years, definitely has had its need for replacement for some time, and we're just about to start that project. And eventually this will allow us to have the single island platform at Davis, and that's just part of the big ADA improvement. This is one of the largest projects that Amtrak's actually leading that will allow us to improve the safety at Davis. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Shirley.
Thanks, Leo. Along with all of the projects that Leo talked about, we still continue to plan for additional service enhancements along our route. As you can see on the map, we have 3 projects going on that are planned service enhancements. The first of which is the Sac-Roseville third track phase 1 project, which is the project to increase the frequency of service from Sacramento to Roseville from the current 1 round trip daily to 3 round trips daily. And this project is currently in final design. It is currently about 60% final design, and we continue to seek full funding for construction. We're currently estimating the year of operations around 2028 for Sac-Roseville phase 1. The second project is the South Bay Connect project, which is between Oakland and Newark. This is the project to reroute the existing service onto an existing shorter, more direct route between Oakland and San Jose. And this will reduce the travel time about 10 minutes between those 2 points. This project is intended to reduce train congestion in the East Bay, as well as create a new Transbay bus and shuttles connection to the San Francisco Peninsula. We're really excited about this new station currently planned at the Ardenwood Park and Ride. This is an existing park and ride that already serves Transbay buses and shuttles. And this easy connection will allow our passengers to transfer between the train to an existing bus and shuttles connection to the San Francisco Peninsula. We think that this is an underserved market for us, and it'll open up new destinations for the Capital Corridor. Right now, the South Bay Connect project is in environmental phase and preliminary engineering. And we continue to work with Union Pacific on determining the specifics of that project. And we're estimating the year of operation to be around 2029. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the Link 21 program. This is the longest term project that we have going on right now. And this is a very large effort. It's a joint BART and CCJPA-led planning effort to plan for a second Transbay crossing between the East Bay and San Francisco for direct rail service into San Francisco And this is very exciting because there is currently no heavy rail connection into San Francisco. And with that connection, you can just imagine the new routes that are possible for, and the new destinations that people can reach with just one train ride. But not to mention that, this is not just a project about one crossing. This is a project to really build out the entire mega regions rail network to support overall rail travel within the Northern California mega region. And this project is continuing to do public outreach. There are multiple workshops planned for June of this year, so look out for those. And this is as I said, very long leading project, and we're estimating around 2040 for some projects to be completed. All right, next slide, please. All right, so this is Tap to Ride is a very exciting program for us. Some of you may have heard about the CalITP program. This is the California Integrated Travel Program. Tap to Ride is one of the first pilots to come out of this program. It is a pilot program to test contactless payment for travel on the Capital Corridor. And if you're not familiar with contactless payment, it's the credit cards or debit cards that have the ability to pay via a tap, and this will allow participants to tap a registered contactless card on board the train to pay for their train trip. So you no longer, if you're selected to participate in this pilot program, you will no longer need to purchase your ticket in advance through Amtrak, but instead you can just tap on when you get on and tap off when you get off the train to pay for your train trip. And this is a pilot program that will really let us see how we are able to operate with this kind of payment method. And I think it'll make riding the train much easier for a lot of the population, removing that obstacle of payment. So the fares are, the exact fares is still being determined, but pilot participants they are expected to receive a discount on their train fares. We're expecting this pilot program to launch in March of this year. And for more information and to sign up for the pilot, please visit the link that you see on the screen here. We are looking for participants who are frequent riders of the Capital Corridor, and we're looking for about 200 participants in this pilot program. Next slide, please. Okay, and then this is the last slide. We're going to talk about marketing and communications. As Rob mentioned before, we're seeing a much stronger leisure market for the Capital Corridor. So our marketing communications plan will focus a lot on how we can cater to that leisure market. So some examples are building upon our destination partnerships. So these are sport events, concerts, shows in San Francisco. And right now, the 49ers are a big thing right now. So we're serving those passengers who are wanting to get down to Santa Clara Levi's Stadium for those games. But also, in this upcoming year, we have Taylor Swift concerts as well as other big events down in Santa Clara. So we're going to be targeting those for ridership. And we continue to enhance our customer experience, with increasing our fare flexibility. As you know, we increased the date range for our 10 ride tickets from 10 days to 90 days, to 90 days for our tickets. And we will continue to provide, as part of the Tap to Ride program, our marketing team is going to be providing a lot of the customer support. So that's something that we're taking on from a small team. So we're going to be learning a lot from that experience. And, just learning more about the leisure market and the different travel markets that may be emerging post-pandemic, and how we can serve those markets with more digital content and perhaps just different products that we can offer. As well, in 2023, we expect to continue our regular corridor conversations. This is our quarterly webinar slash conversations between our managing director and the writers. And for this year, we do want to seek more feedback from our writers during these corridor conversations. So please look out for those. And this is, we're inviting our writers to let us know about more of their opinions about our service. And just continue to build our brand awareness. You know, Capital Quarter is a small but important service within the mega region. So we want more people to hear about us and try to ride with us. Okay, that's all I think I want to cover. Thank you. Next slide, please. All right, lastly, how you can comment. You can, of course, comment on any of the things that you've heard on during this webinar, as well as anything that you might have read within our annual business plan draft here during any of our webinars or workshops. You can also go to capitalquarter.org/business plan for a form that you can type your written comments into. You can also mail us your comments to the address that you see here on the slide. And of course, you can leave us a voicemail too, using the phone number that you see here. Please submit your comments by Monday, 23rd, and we will address every comment in our business plan draft that we submit to our board in February. And that is all.
Hey, Shirley, we have a question about the contactless payment.
Sure, let me see.
It says, does contactless payment apply to Capital Corridor monthly and 10 ride tickets?
I don't know much, but I see Rob nodding his head.
Yeah, I'm gonna, so Prabal, I think you may be interested in being part of the pilot. So the way we're gonna, so when we do the pilot, we're gonna have maybe 200 people involved in that. And we're gonna try a lot of the technology and see how it works. But we'll discount it so that it's the cheapest ride that you can take. The eventual plan with contactless is that you would no longer have to buy a 10 ride or a monthly. What would happen is you would start out your month or your period of time with a tap, right? And once you got to a point where you'd ridden enough times to qualify for a discount, you would automatically get the discount. So you would no longer have to have the outlay at the beginning of the month where you spend $400 for a monthly ticket. It would actually get calculated. And this technology has been used in London, and about 50% of the people in London now use this technology, and it automatically discounts the fares as you go. So it is a way for us to let people who are riding not take a risk. I know sometimes people buy a monthly ticket and then they end up, maybe they get sick and they're out 2 weeks or something and they've bought a monthly ticket. So this is we think a much more equitable approach. We have a lot to work through. So the pilot's going to be the chance for all of us to try it.
We also had another comment from a commuter who's been using the service since 2011 and really likes it and would like to see more trips between Oakland and Sacramento, and specifically commented that train number 522 is the only train in the morning that runs between Oakland and Sacramento, or from Oakland to Sacramento. And this rider would like to see the train get in at 7:30 instead of at 8, so that they can get to work by 8. Any comments on that?
Rob, did you want me to take this one? So one of the things that, so I'll start by answering the first question, and thanks for commuting with us for 12 years, it looks like. So that's quite a long time. And so we do definitely appreciate your loyalty and hope you continue to ride with us. I would say that one of the challenges in adding more ridership, going back to the slides that Rob talked on, really have to do with really making sure that we get more riders. So we realize that we're starting to see some riders out there and we really need more riders. Right now we're right around the mid-50s compared to pre-pandemic service. So we really need a lot more riders to really make our case to the state to allow us to increase service. So budgetarily, we just need, it needs to make financial sense because we are really needing to make sure that our books balance and we need to be fiscally responsible. So that's the first challenge. The second one is also equipment constraints. So even if everything looked great right now, we really need to get that additional equipment from the Venture Cars commissioned onto the San Joaquins. Once you see that happen, then it's a lot easier for that equipment to be repurposed and reshuffled and be utilized in a couple of the corridors, LoSAN and our service. And then as to your specific question on Train 522, we are working on making some minor modifications to the schedule. We're trying to balance the reality that we are limited in how many trains we can operate right now. So unfortunately, we can't activate the previous train that we were running, which was 520. But we're trying to see what we can do with maybe having a merger of the two times and having something in the middle that still allows riders to get into Sacramento by 8 a.m. ideally, hopefully maybe 10 or 15 minutes before that. I'm not sure if we can actually commit to the 7:30 time, but we are working to try to come up with a solution that accommodates both the existing 522 riders, but also hopefully maybe give some better options to the riders that were with us previously on 520.
All right, we have another question. Is the plan to retain bi-level cars for the foreseeable future and also a staffed cafe car versus the San Joaquin approach of single levels and vending machines? I think that's for you, Leo.
Let me start, and then I'll Leo, you can add to it. So we do plan to stay with bi-level cars, at least in the foreseeable future. I'm going to caveat that though, which is that we are going to be expected to transition to zero emissions technology, and that technology is under development. And in our case, right now it looks like it would likely be a hydrogen solution. And as that develops, we will have to be potentially amenable to different equipment types, but we're not there yet. That's out a little bit. So we at this point plan to stick with bi-levels. We also do plan to stick with staffed cafe service at this point. I don't know, that's all I have. Leo, if there's anything you want to
the only thing that I'll add to it is that I think it's likely and we feel pretty certain that at least for the next 10 years, I mean, we don't see any change deviating from that, mainly because we know that the technology is under development and we are looking to really extend the life of the existing fleet. So the state is actually going after some federal dollars right now to overhaul the fleet and to really try to extend that life another 10, 15, 20 years potentially.
Okay, Andrew Johnson had his hand up early in the beginning of the meeting, and I don't know if he still has a question, but if you do, I can unmute you.
And I would also say that if anybody else wants to jump in and just ask a question instead of typing, that's fine.
My hand was up prior to the start of the meeting when we were testing the hand. Sorry. I didn't
Okay,
know it was
no,
still up.
no, just wanted to make sure. That's fine. Okay, we have another question. As someone who rail fans Emeryville, will there be any upgrades or improvements to the Emeryville station?
Rob, I don't know if you have an answer for that. I think that there was something we talked about, but
nothing major. I know that that is a station that still needs some improvements for ADA accessibility, and Amtrak is currently evaluating some improvements there, but I don't think that those changes will be that significant. But other than that, there are no plans at this point to do anything at the Emeryville station. Is there a
Okay.
suggestion for something we do? I guess that's a question.
Okay.
And then someone
Um,
actually asked a question in the chat. Too.
Yeah, I see it. Will any of the trains that end east of Sacramento have bus connector service to Truckee or Reno?
I mean, you're speaking to the, I assume you're speaking to the added Sac Roseville trains. Leah, maybe do you want to just comment on the current bus service?
Yes.
Yeah, so I can talk to the existing bus service, and I don't think I see the question itself, but as to the current service that goes to Reno, we do have 2 round trips that currently go to Reno from Sacramento. And one of the things that I'll say about that is when the pandemic first started, we went down to 1 round trip, and it actually quickly became a very popular round trip connection. And it actually justified adding the 2nd round trip. So we did add the 2nd round trip about 1.5 years ago. And we've continued that 2nd round trip. We're continuing to look at ridership patterns and see when we are prepared and ready to add the 3rd round trip. We're not quite there yet, but prior to the pandemic starting, we did actually run 3 round trips. So that's the current patterns that we're running today.
Okay, we have a question about Coliseum service. If the A's move to Howard Terminal, what are your thoughts on Coliseum service, given that the other 2 sports teams have already vacated the Coliseum area?
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that first. I would say that we do not have any plans to vacate that station, and I would say that the station was built in part to provide service to the sports teams there, but it also provides a really important connection to BART at that location. It's not the best connection. It's a little far, but it is an important connection to BART. The other thing is that I suspect if all the teams relocate from that location, we would likely see some alternative development at that location. I know there's been discussion of that, and we certainly want to be a part of that. So no current plans to vacate that station.
And I would also add that because the airport, Oakland Airport connectors there, it's an important station to serve. We just need to make that connection better.
Yeah, it needs to be better, but you're right, Camille. People actually do sometimes make that connection.
Yeah. We had a couple more comments regarding improving the Emeryville station. One was about the restrooms. I know Rob, you already said there'd be minor ones, but restrooms, and then I think the seat cushions.
Yeah, I answered that we will take that to Amtrak. So if it's within the station, Amtrak does do inspections. Sometimes we have our own staff that does audits, and we then escalate that to the appropriate station staff to make those repairs. So we'll definitely follow up with both sending that over to Amtrak and then making sure that we make the appropriate repairs. And it just depends on where they're located. There are some aspects of the stations that have Amtrak responsibility, and then there are some aspects that might be the city's responsibility. So we just have to take a look at it and see who's responsible, but we will definitely take that one.
And if you ever see something like that, we do have on our website a place to make a comment, and we will forward that to the appropriate folks, regardless of the issue. We monitor that carefully and do make sure that it gets addressed.
Right, we have a question whether there are any plans to continue rail service all the way to Tahoe, maybe seasonally for the ski season.
I will say that unfortunately, not right now. We do have a joint partnership with El Dorado Transit, which allows us to have, both public agencies actually split the cost on the bus connections. So we do have a round trip that goes out to Tahoe, and that is a service that will continue. And we're actually really excited that we were able to make that partnership happen. And equally, we definitely are looking for similar partnerships where we can do other things like that with public agencies.
And I think Shirley was going to talk about our study for the new service out to Reno. Is that right, Shirley?
Well, I was told that we're not quite ready to talk about the study yet,
Okay.
but I can mention it. There is tentative plans to study a potential service extension to Reno, but that is it's in the very early phases, so we're not quite ready to talk about it. We're certainly aware that there's interest, but the reality is having passenger trains go up to Reno is not as easy as it may be. Yeah, let's just say
Yeah,
that.
and I'll just say that I've been able to ride a train up through there myself. Union Pacific hosted an event, and I was able to ride over to Reno. And the really interesting thing about it is the grade of the track is pretty steep for trains. So it's not as fast as you might think it's going to be. But until we're able to do that, I would encourage, and I'm a skier, so I'm a big fan of that idea myself. I would encourage you to ride the bus service. It's pretty good. And it's very popular. And as Leo said, we have the connection now with El Dorado Transit in partnership to South Lake Tahoe. And then we also have the bus service to Truckee. So both of those markets are well served.
Mhm. All right, we have a couple more questions.
I think
Even
so.
at 50% ridership, the bike cars are already crowded. What are future plans for bike commuters?
My answer to that was that we did have CCJPA staff work on another solution that could work, and it actually looked promising. What I think the main constraint right now is that we really need the additional equipment to make further modifications that we can be able to deploy those cars along our corridor. So as more equipment becomes available, that's definitely something that we'll be looking to do to make sure that we have enough bike storage, especially these days we have many commuters that are using multiple modes of transport.
Great. Another question, will there be any contactless card readers at stations or just on board the trains?
Currently just readers on board the train right now, planned.
And that's the kind of stuff we're going to look at. So when we do the pilot, what we find is that it results in crowding at the doors, or we may do that. I know for Caltrain they have something like that. We're going to have to see.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions that came in. This is a correction to a former question about station restrooms. This person is asking about the Richmond station restrooms. There are currently no restrooms available at the platform and no protection from the elements for those transferring between BART and parking. Any plans to improve at Richmond, improve the facilities at Richmond?
We definitely want to continue to improve. I would say just the general upkeep of Richmond. That's been one of the things that we really want to focus on, especially that this is one of our primary connection points to BART. There are restrooms at the BART side of it, but we need to maybe perhaps work directly with them and see how we can make that maybe a better use for the Capital Corridor riders as well. So I'll follow up with that. And then the second part was about protection from the elements for those transferring between BART and the parking. And yeah, I'm familiar with that Richmond connection, and I do realize that, you know, once you leave the platform itself and go under and over to BART, I mean, you eventually do have to walk outside to make it to the parking side. So I'll connect to with my partners at BART and see if they have any plans for any type of awning or something that can actually provide that protection, especially right now. I mean, we've had some unusual weather, and I can understand and appreciate how that can be not the best experience when you're trying to make it to and from your station over to the parking structure. So I'll follow up with that.
All right. Here's a question I'm going to answer. Do you have any future plans to extend BART to Sacramento? The answer is no. Well, first of all, that would be a very, very costly endeavor because BART requires its own separate right-of-way because of its technology. And we have Capital Corridor that goes to Sacramento. So if you're looking for better connections between the Capital Corridor and the BART system so that you could access any stations on the BART system, then that's something that Link 21 is definitely looking into, is making the regional rail network and BART work together better. So hopefully that answers your question. Next one, we have a compliment from a writer who says they're very impressed by the Capital Corridor management based on this webinar. Keep it up. Thank you very much for the compliment. And then someone asks, when will the popcorn concession return to San Jose Teardown? I don't know that we have control over that.
I think probably more riders will help bring that popcorn concession.
There you go. There you go.
So keep riding.
Okay. I'm not seeing any more new questions, so
We have 6 minutes left, so
if
this
you have any, now's the time to type them into the Q&A. Otherwise, we're going to say goodnight. Well, we got 18 questions, so that was good. Thank you very much for your interest, for your time tonight. We appreciate you using our service and taking the time to give us comments and feedback. And of course, you know, if you think of something else after tonight, you're more than welcome to submit that in writing online or by mail or via voicemail, as shown on the slide here. You have until Monday, the 23rd. You're welcome. Thank you for writing Capital Corridor. All right.
Thanks, everybody.
I think we'll adjourn this meeting. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye.